Enter at your peril past the bolted doors where impossible things may happen. That's right, it's Dexter's Laboratory. Well, more Dexter's Lab. It was Cartoon Network's very first original series that helped pioneer a whole new generation of animation for the network. Hi, I'm Joe with Channel Frederator, and I'll be taking you through another set of info about our favorite kid genius with 107 more Dexter's Lab facts. Cause even after all these years, we still can't stay out of his laboratory. So don't touch that button and let's get started. Genndy Tartakovsky's passion for animation started with one of his earliest memories of arriving in America. There, at a small 7-Eleven in Columbus, Ohio, a comic book caught his eye that would change his life forever. That comic book was an issue of DC's Super Friends, and it served as Genndy's earliest inspiration and gateway into the fascinating world of cartoons. As a nod to this life-changing moment, Genndy created a parody superhero team called the Justice Friends as a cartoon short within the Dexter's Lab series. The leader of the group is Major Glory, and he's Dexter's favorite superhero. Ironically, Genndy almost didn't pursue his passion for animation. After high school, he looked into taking advertising classes at Columbia College. The idea was not his own, but more a suggestion from his family to find a career in business that also implemented his love for the arts. Genndy claims it was fate that set him on the path towards achieving his dreams. He arrived late to registration at Columbia College and missed his chance in advertising. But what he found instead was so much more fulfilling: the awesome world of animation. Once he arrived at CalArts, his drawing style improved 200%, all because of one tiny piece of advice. All images are derived from simple shapes. You'll notice that Dexter himself is even extremely simplistic in design. Genndy drew him as more of an icon. The entire idea for Dexter's Lab was based off of one image Genndy drew while brainstorming ideas for a student film. He drew a tall, thin ballerina and immediately thought that she needed a polar opposite to accompany her. So, he drew a short, square little boy. He then developed their personalities to contrast in the same way. The girl was a fan of the arts, and the boy was a student of science. It was the classic odd couple dynamic. Initially, Genndy was working on creating characters that were reminiscent of the Calvin and Hobbes comic book series for this student film. Then, suddenly, inspiration struck and Dee Dee was born. This became the first ever incarnation of Dexter's Lab. At the time, it was just a student project entitled Changes, in which Dee Dee gets a hold of Dexter's special remote, which is capable of changing humans into animals. It eventually served as the pilot episode for the series, and later re-aired as the 4th episode in the first season. Although he decided on a different direction for the characters, the entire Changes storyline is a reference to a recurring Calvin and Hobbes gag where Calvin gets a hold of a transmogrifier machine that changes him into different animals. The hilarious sibling dynamic is partially based off of his own relationship with his brother Alex. Although Alex is the tall one, he's the inspiration behind Dexter, while Genndy himself is the role of the meddling sister, Dee Dee. The fact that Dee Dee was always messing around in Dexter's Lab is a personal reflection of how Genndy always tried to play with his brother's toy collection, but was never allowed. The character dynamic of Dexter and Dee Dee utilizes an interesting reversal of a common television trope, in which the younger sibling typically annoys the older, which apparently was the real-life case in Genndy and Alex's sibling rivalry. We mentioned before that artist Rob Renzetti served as Genndy's partner in crime, where the two were first getting their start in the industry. But we didn't mention exactly how they met. Genndy once went to visit his brother in college, who was rooming with Rob at the time. Rob describes Genndy as one of the many lumps that was sleeping on their living room floor. The two started talking the next morning, and the rest is history. The stars aligned once more when Rob Renzetti transferred to Columbia College. It was there that the two worked together on their portfolios and eventually applied to CalArts. Right out of CalArts, Genndy and his pal Rob landed jobs overseas in Madrid, Spain, doing animation for Batman the Animated Series. But it was fellow artist Craig McCracken, creator of the Powerpuff Girls, who set them up with work at Hanna-Barbera once they had returned to California just 2 years later. Somehow, the CalArts college pals all landed a job together. The animation newbies were placed in a trailer out in the Hanna-Barbera Studios parking lot where they learned the real ins and outs of making cartoons. The team consisted of Genndy, Rob Renzetti, Craig McCracken, and Paul Rudish. Together, they reworked Genndy's student film into the first official Dexter's Lab short. Once Genndy and his team reworked his student film Changes, they submitted it to Cartoon Network's Cartoon Showcase, created by our very own Fred Seibert. However, this decision was mostly influenced influenced by a Hanna-Barbera producer who had seen the film and urged him to pitch it to the network. Genndy described the Dexter's Lab pitch as being very nerve-wracking. The network wasn't really crazy about the idea until they saw the cartoon and how well it was executed. Rob Renzetti commented on his execution while discussing Dexter's Lab. Rob expressed that Genndy's work ethic was inspiring. He said that Genndy had a feel for what would and wouldn't work on screen, and that his timing and editing was second to none. It's really no wonder why Dexter's Lab gained such recognition. So whatever happened to Rob? Well, like the rest of the team that worked on Dexter's Lab, Rob went on to have his own cartoon. Remember My Life as a Teenage Robot? The series went on from 2003 to 2009 and was inspired by some of Rob's favorite shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The core group of animators stuck together through most projects at Cartoon Network, from Dexter's Lab to Samurai Jack. But eventually, the friends parted ways and branched out within the industry. Luckily, the original dynamic duo, Rob Renzetti and Genndy Tartakovsky, were eventually reunited for the new season of Samurai Jack. Genndy's experience as a young immigrant growing up in America translates into Dexter's character. The fact that he is an outsider with a funny-sounding accent derives from his childhood. However, unlike his childhood self, Dexter isn't afraid of being an outsider. He owns it. So in some ways, Dexter's like a confident version of Genndy's childhood self. As mentioned before in our previous 107 facts about Dexter's Lab, the origin of his accent is assumed to be Russian, but that's not entirely set in stone. It's said that one source of inspiration goes back to Genndy's college days, where his buddy Rob would prank call him using a similar accent. This proves one thing for certain: an exaggerated accent of unknown origin sure is fun to hear. Genndy claims the recipe for success in animation comes from three simple elements: use of classic slapstick-style physical humor, some intellectual statement on current affairs or pop culture, and overall character appeal. According to Genndy, another recipe for success in animation is the creator-driven cartoons, which he helped pioneer. This is when the network gives the creator complete creative control over their own concept, which was the case in Dexter's Lab. When asked about his favorite shows of all time, past or present, Genndy responded with Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. It looks like someone's a fan of Larry David. 4 Dexter's Lab pilot episodes were created. Those were Changes, The Big Sister, Old Man Dexter, and Dimwit Dexter. They would later re-air as part of Season 1. The 3rd episode of the first season, Old Man Dexter, was the first official appearance of Dexter's dad, but a picture of him can be seen in the background of episode 1. The pilot episode Dimwit Dexter was originally titled Dumb Like Dee Dee, but it was changed before broadcasting. Which title do you like better? Mike Lazo, former head of programming at Cartoon Network at the time, claims that Dexter's Lab was his favorite short of all of the 48 world premiere tunes that aired. He just couldn't get over the humor that came from the brother-sister rivalry. The first official episode of the series was entitled D-Dimensional, which aired in April of 1996. In the episode, Dee Dee is sent back in time by Dexter to relay an important message to his past self, but his past self won't listen. This episode was also directed by good friend Rob Renzetti. The interdimensional doorway featured in this episode was a parody of Stargate from the popular sci-fi television series Stargate SG-1. Although the show had received positive reception, it wasn't an overnight success. Dexter's Lab didn't gain momentum until it was nominated for an Emmy that year for Outstanding Animated Program. For Genndy, that's when success of the show became real. Although the show didn't win an Emmy, he stated that to be nominated is to receive proper recognition from your peers. The character models on Dexter's Lab were always a season behind for animators. Rob described the animation process as learning to draw the models first, then freestyling the characters with personal flair. As a result, the end design is nothing like the original model, and characters are constantly being updated. Dexter's Lab uses a very stylized animation technique called a smear, which depicts a sudden burst of movement between 2 frames of character poses. This was one of many techniques used by animation icon Chuck Jones back in his heyday. The show follows the classic 3 shorts format, showing a Dexter segment in the beginning and end, and another cartoon in between. The other cartoon slot was sometimes filled with Dial M for Monkey or the Justice Friends. In some countries, these alternate segments were sometimes dropped. Dial M for Monkey is a parody of DC's comic book series Dial H for Hero. It's also an ongoing joke that a majority of the villains' names end in an or sound, such as Promotor, Huntor, Rastlor, or Barbecueor. In 2001, Cartoon Network announced that they weren't quite finished with Dexter's Lab, despite Genndy being finished. They renewed the series for a 3rd season, requesting 13 more episodes, and added an all-new creative crew, including Chris Savino taking over as creative director. The series ran for 2 more seasons, totaling 78 episodes. but only 52 of them were headed by Genndy himself. The all-new crew brought about many changes within the second half of the series, but the biggest, most noticeable change of all was the transition from traditional cell animation to digital animation and coloring. So what do we know about Dexter himself? For starters, his very first words were, "At last, mother and father, I am created," as seen in the musical episode Libretto in Season 2. When Dexter was born, his head size was twice the size of a normal baby's. It shocked his father upon sight, and the doctors assured him that this was a sign of genius. So I guess all geniuses have huge heads. That explains Jimmy Neutron. Dexter has literally worn glasses since the day he was born. This is probably the only trait he inherited from his father's side. Despite being the silly, clueless one, Dee Dee must be smarter than she looks. She's able to bypass any security measure Dexter puts in place and gain access to his lab rather quickly. She has also displayed an incredible knowledge of botanical and biological subjects, even more so than Dexter. Dexter's first scientific observation was that all actions must have a reaction, which just so happens to be Newton's third law of physics. Of course, this realization was a result of Dee Dee's carelessness upon their first meeting. Dexter's mom is a complete germaphobe. The one time her gloves went missing, she went borderline insane. That explains why we almost never see her without them. Dexter's mom and dad met back in college during the 80s. Dexter's dad actually gifted those yellow rubber gloves to her so that she could cope with her overwhelming fear of germs. It's revealed through Dexter's mom's brother Virgil that her maiden name is O'Reilly. O'Reilly is a predominantly Irish surname, which may explain the red hair trait that runs in the family. There's a good chance Uncle Virgil is actually a leprechaun because apparently he's magic. Oh, and Mark Hamill of Star Wars provided the voice, which is also pretty magical. Dexter's father is a huge sports fanatic. His athletic skills were passed down to Dee Dee, but poor Dexter doesn't have a single athletic bone in his body. When looking at the design of Dexter's aged self in Old Man Dexter, and then looking at Dexter's grandfather in The Granddaddy of All Inventions, it's pretty obvious where Dexter gets his looks from. Dexter's genius runs in the family. It was revealed that Dexter's grandfather is an ultra genius too. He managed to create free energy in his garage, which also doubles as his lab. It's implied that the analytical, science-loving gene runs in Dexter's mother's side of the family. The genius scientist grandfather is her father, and when mom cooks, she does it with the same scientific precision and focus that Dexter has when working on a new invention. There are also many similarities between Dee Dee and Dad. Aside from the blonde aloofness, Dad constantly annoys Mom while she's in the kitchen, much like Dee Dee does to Dexter in his lab. Dad has also been known to shout, "Hi, Dexter," in a similar way as Dee Dee. Like most moms out there, Dexter's mom has an utter fear of and hatred for mice. We see her go crazy over catching one in the episode Mom and Jerry, as a tribute to the classic Tom and Jerry cartoons. Dee Dee has an imaginary friend named Kusagaloopagoo, or Koosie for short. He's a parody of Snuffleupagus, HR Pufnstuf, and Barney the Dinosaur. He's also voiced by veteran voice actor Dom DeLuise. Many fans also speculate that Koosie is a tribute to Don Bluth films. That would explain the casting choice, as Dom DeLuise frequently voices characters in Bluth films. Koosie also appeared in a Powerpuff Girls episode entitled Imaginary Friend, in which a new kid makes a troublesome imaginary friend. Bubbles references her own imaginary friend, which happens to be Koosie. Dexter's mom was voiced by veteran voice actor Kath Soucie. She also provided the voice for Dee Dee's beloved Princess Ponypuff in the series. Betty and Barney Rubble of the Flintstones each make a special appearance in the episode Dad is Disturbed, as friends of Dexter's parents, though they may be a little distant after the way Dexter's dad treats them in this episode. Genndy is a big Conan the Barbarian fan. He even cites one of his favorite songs as the theme song from the 80s feature film. So it's a little ironic that the season 4 episode, Dexter the Barbarian, wasn't written by Genndy, but perhaps it was pitched by him, or at least definitely supported by him. Conan the Barbarian supporting actor and narrator Mako Iwamatsu narrates the Dexter's Lab ending theme song, as well as provided the voice of Aku in Samurai Jack. Genndy once stated that Dexter's Lab would have been boring if there wasn't an arch-nemesis involved, Hugh Mandark. This need to include an evil arch-nemesis might have spawned from his admiration of the James Bond book series, which is famous for playing up the supervillain arch-enemy trope. Mandark has only one hobby outside of science, technology, and pure evil, and that's surfing. Despite his utter hatred for outdoor activities, Mandark learned how to surf in a failed attempt to woo Dee Dee, who was smitten by a young surfer at the time. It's ironic that Dee Dee would have a crush on Surfer Boy from the episode Sun, Surf, and Science, because the two are eerily similar in design. They're the same shape and size, plus he also has blonde hair and blue eyes like Dee Dee. She must really love herself. During this failed attempt, Mandark met his one true friend throughout the entire run of the series, and that's the unnamed guy referred to as Surfer Boy. There's a Chuck E. Cheese restaurant reference in the episode Chubby Cheese. The mechanical animal jam band feature in this episode is actually comprised of old Hanna-Barbera characters, minus Chubby Cheese himself. Dee Dee's favorite cartoon is Ponypuff Princess, which is a parody of the My Little Pony franchise. It's been confirmed by the Powerpuff Girls episode, Members Only, that Dexter's Lab and the Powerpuff Girls coexist in the same universe. This is why the Justice Friends supergroup are seen in episodes of PPG, although there are several differences that they have from their versions in Dexter's Lab. Most notably, the PPG versions is a men-only club known as the AWSM, Association of World Supermen. Another notable change is with the character Comrade Red, who is seen as a member of the supergroup in the Powerpuff Girls, but in Dexter's Lab, he is a supervillain. Ponypuffs also cameoed in a few episodes of the Powerpuff Girls, but they were slightly altered versions under the name The Pretty Puff Ponies. Ironically, Craig McCracken would go on to marry Lauren Faust, the creative director behind the My Little Pony reboot. Genndy met his wife while working on the show, but the two didn't date until 4 years later. Genndy and Dawn tied the knot in 2000, just shortly after the television film Dexter's Laboratory Ego Trip premiered in 1999. We all know Dexter idolizes Albert Einstein and Major Glory, but another beloved hero of his is Action Hank. Action Hank is an amalgam of 70s and 80s action heroes like Chuck Norris, Mr. T, and G.I. Joe. Dee Dee and Dexter watching parodies of My Little Pony and G.I. Joe serves as a tribute to the 80s Saturday morning cartoon lineup. The fact that the two are often seen using brand items based off of those cartoons, like Ponypuff cereal, references a little-known fact that those cartoons were made specifically to sell products. The episode entitled Dexter's Wacky Races is another huge shout-out to the old Saturday morning cartoons. Wacky Races was a 60s and 70s era Hanna-Barbera cartoon, in which characters from various cartoons would race against each other in uniquely designed vehicles that matched their personality. The completely uncensored version of the infamous banned episode Rude Removal can be found online, and we do mean completely uncensored, F-bombs and all. The Rude Removal illustration at the beginning of the episode features Dee Dee flipping the bird. We are sure that was intended to be blurred for broadcast, but the uncensored image can be found online. Former Cartoon Network Vice President Linda Semensky loved the Rude Removal episode. She wanted to air it during a later time slot because it would have been more suitable for late-night viewers. We already mentioned in the previous Dexter's Lab 107 that the notorious Dial M for Monkey short was banned, but did you know that there was a Justice Friends short that was also banned? It was removed for showing a drunken Crunk vomiting off camera. The Season 2 episode Mach 5 is a parody of Speed Racer. The title of the episode is a reference to the original Japanese title of the show, Mach Go Go Go. The pun, of course, being that the spelling of Mach in the instance of Dexter's Lab actually means to parody or to mimic. In the episode The Muffin King, Dexter's dad quotes Darth Vader's most famous line in an attempt to coax Dexter into giving him a muffin. He says to Dexter, "I am your father," to which Dexter hilariously replies, "That's not possible." No, wait, you're right. The episode Game Over is a tribute to the 1982 film Tron, with a few other pop culture references sprinkled throughout, such as the line, "Help me, Dee Dee, you're my only hope," serving as yet another Star Wars reference. The game Dexter and Dee Dee are playing in the beginning of the episode, Primal Fighter, is a reference to an old arcade game entitled Primal Rage, whose two most popular characters were a T-Rex and a giant primitive gorilla, which is also parodied in the episode. Dexter's game controllers that he and Dee Dee are using when playing Primal Fighter resemble the old Atari 2600 controllers. The arcade game Primal Rage was later released on the Atari and Sega systems. The classic Hanna-Barbera superhero duo, Dynomutt and Blue Falcon, made a special appearance in Season 2 of Dexter's Laboratory, in which Dexter assists Blue Falcon in rebuilding a damaged Dynomutt, but accidentally builds an aggressive version. Since the Justice Friends served as a sitcom parody of the Avengers, it's no surprise that a laugh track was added to create the full effect. It's also interesting to note that laugh tracks were common in old Hanna-Barbera cartoons, but have since become a thing of the past. Major Glory is Uncle Sam's nephew. Honestly though, are you that surprised? Apparently, Uncle Sam was a very strict parental figure at one point, but he now just goes with the flow, you know? Apparently, the Declaration of Independence is also a member of the Justice Friends, as well as Major Glory's trusty sidekick. I'm not sure if you guys remember the classic episode of Schoolhouse Rock, but the Declaration of Independence seems awfully familiar to Bill from the sing-along I'm Just a Bill. Outside of the core group, there's a pretty lengthy list of official Justice Friends members, and just like that main trio, they are all parodies of popular DC and Marvel characters. There's even a Ratman character that drives around in the Ratmobile. Ratman's name is a blatant parody of Batman, although other members of the Justice Friends admit it doesn't quite make sense. There was a Dexter's Lab short that aired in theaters before the 2002 Powerpuff Girls feature film entitled Chicken Scratch. The short was later released as part of the final season. The series finale aired on September 5th, 2003. It was an episode entitled Two Geniuses Together Forever, in which Dexter surrenders to Mandark only to double-cross him in the end. In a first-ever attempt to reunite all its global divisions, Cartoon Network held a worldwide marathon called Dexter Goes Global in 2001, which featured a slew of fan-chosen episodes that aired in 96 countries and was broadcast in 12 different languages. The marathon totaled 12 hours. Fans from all across the world voted on their favorite episodes of Dexter's Lab, and a winner from each country was included along with two brand new episodes, Streaky Clean and Soul Brother. There was a Dexter's Lab CD released in 2002 called Dexter's Lab: The Hip Hop Experiment. The soundtrack was promoted through ads on Cartoon Network, Powerpuff Girls DVD, and even in hip-hop magazines. Coolio is a big fan of the show. He proudly wrote the song Dexter, What's His Name, for the 2002 soundtrack. On August 16, 2002, the entire Cartoon Network Friday lineup was dedicated to Dexter's Lab and the promotion of the new CD. 3 music videos premiered, featuring songs from popular artists like Prince Paul, Coolio, and will.i.am. In 1997, Dexter's Lab received an international shout-out from the Cartoons on the Bay Animation Festival in Italy, which awarded the show the title of Best Script. To this day, Dexter's Lab still gets widespread critical acclaim. It ranked number 4 on Entertainment Weekly's Top 10 Best Cartoon Network Shows in 2012, and in 2009, it was voted the 72nd Best Animated Series of all time by IGN. In 1999, Dexter's Lab helped increase Cartoon Network's ratings by a whopping 20%. It remained one of the highest-rated original shows on the network all the way through 2002. There are several comic book adaptations of Dexter's Lab. The first series was released as early as 1997 and ran through 1999 as a Cartoon Network Presents comic. It returned in 2001 as a featured comic in the Cartoon comic series, until it was replaced by Cartoon Block Party. Dexter's Lab was an ongoing segment in the Cartoon Block Party comic series until 2009. DC Comics actually ran a 34-issue series of Dexter's Lab from 1999 to 2003. The Boy Genius would eventually get another solo comic series by IDW Publishing in 2014. The fast food franchises Subway, Dairy Queen, Burger King, and Wendy's have all had Dexter's Lab promotional toys. Did you get any? There were 2 board games released under the Dexter's Lab title by the Pressman Toy Corporation in 2001. They were Race to the Brainergizer and The Incredible Invention vs. Dee Dee. To this day, Genndy still considers Dexter's Lab to be his greatest accomplishment. It was his first claim to fame, and he's proud to have created such a timeless character archetype, the Boy Genius. Once again, I'm Joe, and thanks for watching 107 more facts about Dexter's Laboratory. What's your favorite episode? Are you the Dexter or the Dee Dee in your family? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. We have videos dropping every day, so make sure to subscribe to Channel Frederator, your Cartoon Central on the internet.